Just because you have rights today does not mean that you will have rights tomorrow.
We are seeing a record-breaking number of anti-LGBTQ and especially anti-trans legislation.
They're terrified of us because they don't like our freedom. Don't sit there looking so good, thinking that you think the fight is over. The fight has just begun. You come from a family of revolution. That is the foundation from which you were born. You literally come from human beings who not only know how to picket, we know how to win.
This is the civil rights issue of our times. And we're fighting for trans justice, we're also fighting for racial justice. We're fighting for reproductive justice. We're fighting for immigrant rights. We're fighting against anti-Semitism and xenophobia and white supremacy. We are going to be centering equality and liberation for all, period, and without exception.
Mark my words. We're not going anywhere. Now get out and begin.
The psychological shock when they will see in future what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, in future these people will be simply squashed like cockroaches. Nobody is going to pay them nothing for their beautiful, noble ideas of equality. This they don't understand, and it will be the greatest shock for them, of course.
Bombshell claim about UFOs. A former U.S. intelligence official and Air Force veteran claims a top-secret program is withholding evidence of alien spacecraft.
Certainly interesting. A military whistleblower has now handed over classified information to Congress. Fox's Lauren Blanchard has more.
David Grush handed over extensive classified information to Congress and the Intelligence Community Inspector General, saying it exposes top-secret programs that have retrieved and studied debris from alien spacecraft, which he says have been intentionally withheld from lawmakers and the American public. His claims coming just days after a first-of-its-kind NASA hearing on UFO sightings around the world.
It's now our collective responsibility to investigate these occurrences with the rigorous scientific scrutiny that they deserve.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you to all the members of NASA's UAP Independent Study Team. Your selfless dedication to the pursuit of knowledge is just so commendable. And I want to thank you, the audience, for tuning in today to watch our first deliberative meeting of NASA's Independent Study Team on evaluating and categorizing unidentified anomalous phenomena. Before I begin, though, I really do want to double down on Dan's words that it is really disheartening to hear of the harassment that our panelists have faced online, all because they're studying this topic. NASA stands behind our panelists, and we do not tolerate abuse. Harassment only leads to further stigmatization of the UAP field, significantly hindering the scientific progress and discouraging others to study this important subject matter. Your harassment also obstructs the public's right to knowledge. Our panelists are leading experts in the scientific, aeronautics, and data analytics communities. We are very lucky to have them on board to share their invaluable insights to inform NASA on what possible data could be collected in the future and how it can be collected to help us better understand the nature of UAP.
Wow.
There are so many conspiracy theorists now. The internet is sort of on fire.
There's like an 8-foot person beside it, and another one's inside, and it has big eyes and looking at us, and it's still there.
Okay, where is this on your property?
In my backyard. I swear to God, this is not a joke. This is actually, we're terrified of it.
So there's two people or two subjects that are in your backyard?
Correct, and they're very large. They're like 8 foot, 9 feet, 10 foot. I don't know. They look like aliens to us.
All right, what we just heard is part of a 911 call from a family in Nevada saying they saw creatures walking around their backyard.
When they took him up in the spaceship, the aliens abused him sexually.
Remember when the pride flag made sense? It was originally an 8-striped rainbow, but was soon refined into the 6-striped version that was the norm for many decades. But then after this, trans activists came along and said, why aren't we in there? So we got this one. And this was the chevron with the pink, white and blue, which was based on the trans flag. Activists were then concerned that it was excluding intersex people, so they added this symbol. Last year, some bright spark added a red umbrella to represent sex workers. Last year then, we had Microsoft. They designed a new version to incorporate all the other multiple sexualities and genders that have been invented over the past few years. It looks like a spaceship going at warp speed through a Care Bear's bumhole.
They're fast. They, not she. I've never felt like a she or a her, so I would prefer they or them from now on.
Bones. Could something be making me hallucinate? What do you mean?
Yeah, and with gender equality, we know what that means.
Yeah, it means sterilization of the youth of America.
So, you know, we've played James Lindsay before, and if you ever get James Lindsay, you really have to listen to his speeches, and we've played bits of it in the past, and it's always quite good. But how does this really get into our schools, into our education system? This is where, our eye was off the ball. This has been going on for 30 years. It's so deeply ingrained. And the Tinfoil Hat podcast, Sam Tripoli, this is a pretty good podcast. So he had Jordan Henry on, a parent, activist parent, and he brings in a new name, Paulo Freire, and how this thinking has been introduced and continues to propagate throughout the entire educational system, regardless of what subject it is.
These professors had us read this guy named Paulo Freire, a Brazilian Marxist from Recife, Brazil.
You know Paulo Freire?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's the guy.
He's the guy.
He is the nexus.
You know the guy?
Yeah. Well, I've never met him, no.
No, but what do you know about the guy? Just give us your quick background.
He is a Marxist. He's a theoretical Marxist. He's out of Brazil, and he came up with the entire scheme to corrupt the education system to promote Maoism.
Well,
as we would have it, as we would define it.
Trans Maoism as we define it.
He is the guy. He's the guy. He's the go-to guy.
Well,
it all traces back to him.
Well, and he's still alive, this guy?
I don't know.
We need to bring him to account.
Indian Marxist from Recife, Brazil. This guy basically changed education. This is educational theory that I had to read, okay? Educational Marxist theory that I had to read for landscape architecture school. My professors was like, oh, yeah, you need to develop a critical consciousness for landscape architecture. I'm like, for trees? For plants? And they're like, yeah, you do. And I pushed back, and I was like, okay, this book, Paulo Freire, it's a book called Pedagogy of the Oppressed. This book is the most influential book in education. Every educator that you know, every teacher that you know who's been to school since 1990 for sure has read Paulo Freire. And if they go get like an advanced degree, like a master's or a doctorate, bro, they have to buy into the ideology. They have to go in deep. He quotes Che, he quotes Mao, he quotes Lenin, he quotes Lukács, Marx, Hegel, all of the big Marxist philosophers who were activists. They call it liberation theology. So it's Marxist Catholicism.
Right. Yeah, that's the term.
Liberation theology. Yes, liberation theology.
They call it liberation theology. So it's Marxist Catholicism. And they funded him to go to the World Council of Churches in Geneva, Switzerland. And, long story short, he got picked up by these academics in Harvard. And they flew. He was the toast of the elites in America and in Europe, funded by the Rockefellers, funded by the UN, as an official diplomat or some nonsense. And then they pushed his book over and over and over again. And then they pushed all these Marxist ideologues who are basically, you call them, they're Freirean, F-R-E-I-R-E. That's how you spell Freire for anybody listening. And it's a cult. It's a cult. It's a straight up Marxist Catholic liberation theology cult that the Rockefellers funded to overtake American education. The whole point of his book in education is that, he wants to get rid of all distinction between, the teacher and the student. Like there's no hierarchy whatsoever. You're not going to learn from the teacher. The student actually teaches the teacher.
Yeah, like the child teaches the parent.
And it's more like they're equivalent, and there's no power whatsoever. So that's why you see all this like chaos in schools right now. It's because yeah. These educators got brainwashed into thinking that the students run the show. Woke is Paulo Freire. Woke is critical consciousness. It is that is where this shit came from. It's Maoist. It's Maoist thought reform. Okay. And that was his whole mission, was to basically insert Maoist thought reform in the West. And damn, he was successful. Their policies from the top down are designed to destabilize children, to take away their identity, to make sure that they do not have one. And that's critical consciousness, right? Because they want to have this mindset for children from a very early age, where they're not really teaching them like what to think or even like how to think, but which questions to ask and in which ways. Why did critical race theory, why did cultural Marxism get pushed in the institutions? Why does UCLA have a critical race theory law department now funded by our tax dollars? Why? It's because the government wants to keep us separated. They don't want us to unite. These institutions, higher ed, these elite institutions, they're specifically designed to brainwash people and to keep them siloed. There's this academic paper. It's by this like woke academic, like gender specialist, whatever, gender theory woman. Her name's Hannah Dyer, D-Y-E-R. Listen to this title of this academic journal article. It's called "Queer Futurity and Childhood Innocence Beyond the Injury of Development." That's the title, bro. All right. And then like one of her quotes is, "It's better to understand queerness as that which is destructive to the social order and in contradiction to reproductive futurity." Literally, queerness is attacking social order and the ability for children to eventually reproduce.
Welcome to the year 2050. Space technology is powering smart cities with autonomous transportation and cyber-secure AI-enabled mesh networks that connect and protect us. Advanced one-click production and launch on Cadence allows for customization and real-time improvement to fuel a rapidly growing space economy. Products are built, repaired, and upgraded in space for immediate deployment and use. Multimodal AI remote sensors identify and track everything around the globe to predict incidents before they become problems. Space-based quantum-enabled communications and AI technology detect and neutralize concerns before they become threats. Off-world living is a reality, with power beaming technology, infrastructure services, and humans working side by side with intelligent, autonomous robots to build safe, scalable habitats to live and work. How we live in the future is being shaped by advances in space technology today, and it's our team of visionaries.
We're making the future faster.
I myself would like to see Stockholm Conference be the place and time at which the people of the earth working together dedicated themselves to producing in the last 25 years of our century of science, the 20th century, dedicating themselves to using their intellectual, technological, and scientific resources to bringing man into equilibrium.
After 2 years of intensive preparation, we have placed before the governments of the world a program of action that is really without precedent.
Today, all the peoples of the world are moving into the same world, a world created by the accelerated technology of the 20th century, a world shaped by the people and events of that time, our time. In the 20th century, we reached for the moon and developed the technology to grasp it. We traveled backward in time and saw what our own planet looked like in its primordial beginnings. Although we may travel in space and visit the moon, the Earth is still our home because it's unique, the only accessible planet that can sustain our life.
This film is an effort to an understanding of the environmental crisis and its possible cure. We are looking at our Earth. The thin red line running along the outer perimeter is our biosphere. As seen from space, it is the smallest veil of cover, imperceivable and delicate, the only known place in our solar system that can sustain life for man. We cannot exist more than a few thousand feet above our Earth, nor can we yet live beneath our oceans and soil. Most of us exist near sea level. The inescapable fact is that man can exist only in his biosphere.
This vision of the planet that you see from the moon, a single, alone, full of light, full of life, and the only single planet that's got these qualities, that vision, especially among the young, can mean a redirection of how people think about this problem, because you will not create a community unless you've got some moral commitment. And moral commitment needs some very stern underpinnings, because we ain't moral easy. Now, it seems to me that the biosphere, in which we share a climate, we share systems, we share ocean, and we cannot escape it, could be the physical, scientific, and technical underpinning of a moral community, because we tend to be moral when we have no further choice.
One of the world's great women, a foremost anthropologist and a great humanist, Dr. Margaret Mead explains her views.
The air we breathe is indivisible. And this is something that we all share and is impossible for any group of people, any individual, any country to possess.
The basic cause of the problem is people. As the population of the world rapidly increases, there is greater demand on the Earth's basic resources of land, water, and air. This planet's capacity to give sustenance and to absorb and recycle waste is not boundless. And in the next 25 years, the Earth's population will increase more than it has in the last 1,000,000 years. And to the nations of the world, this poses a greater threat than anything we have experienced before. People on every continent, all facing disaster if we don't find a solution for the population explosion that now threatens the world. Because man, like all creatures, needs and depends upon the oxygen, the water, the food that is provided by the self-balancing tendency of nature. And this is being threatened by the technology that makes civilization possible. By our interfering with natural processes, we are destroying the natural environment upon which we all depend. If we do not now take action, drastic action, and develop the wisdom to maintain an environment which is basic to all life, the only answer can be disaster.
What I'm about to tell you hasn't been something that I've disclosed until recently in the help of Dr. Greer, among other people, so I appreciate your help with this. In 2009, my unit, which was most decorated infantry battalion in the entire Marine Corps, which was 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, was called in to do humanitarian assistance operations out in the Philippines, which was Operation Quezon. It was transitioning between colors like a light matte gray, as well as a dark matte black. So in between, that's what it kept, and it was very smooth. We had all looked at each other as we got online, and we decided to investigate. The further thing I want to say is that I actually took pictures and video of this before we actually trucked down. We had a dump pouch where we basically, if we expend ammunition, we want to retain our magazines, so we put those there. So I dropped my camera on there, and we decided to go down. We didn't have any communications, which was weird, and that was a very odd thing, and it's something that either could have been good that we did, or it could have been something that
the last 25 years of our century of science, the 20th century, dedicating themselves to using their intellectual, technological, and scientific resources to bring man into equilibrium.
Man inhabits two worlds, the natural one that preceded us by billions of years, and the world we have built from our technology, using our machines and science to create an environment obedient to our purpose and direction. And now, as we enter the last stages of the 20th century, there is a spreading sense of awareness that something fundamental and irrevocable is happening to man's relations between both his worlds. Our new knowledge of planetary interdependence demands a reshaping of our individual loyalties. We must develop a sense of planetary community and commitment. We must make our Earth a center of rational loyalty for all mankind. Nationalistic loyalties must become secondary to our allegiance to Earth. We can only hope to survive in all our prized diversity by achieving an ultimate loyalty and devotion to our single, beautiful, vulnerable planet, the Earth. Alone in its life-supporting systems, powered by inconceivable energies mediated for us through the most delicate adjustments. Is this not a precious home for all us Earthlings? Is it not worthy of our love? Does it not deserve all the courage and care of which we're capable to preserve it from degradation and destruction? Now, for the first time in the history of man, an international movement is underway. The people of the nations and the nations of the world have joined together to find the answers. This building and the world's representatives hold the solution. We have seen what we've done to bring about the destruction of our Earth. Is it not the time now to cure the disease that we ourselves have created?
I've been working as a counsellor for nearly 35 years. I've worked in both the medical practice, grief and bereavement, hospice, and many other issues, what I call normal counselling issues. But for the last 25 years, I've been working in the arena of the phenomena that we call contact with non-human intelligences. What has been very vital and extremely important in my work is in recent years, I became one of the co-founders of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation. And this was vital because it brought in all of these specialists in various fields of knowledge to look at this phenomena from a perspective that was far more broader in its scope than pure ufology, which is looking at the evidence of individuals having interactions with craft, the reality, the nuts and bolts. We were looking at it from a perspective of human consciousness. And that brought in all those in that field of consciousness. And the Free Foundation now has become the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute. And it's exploring this now from every level, which includes those that have experiences as near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, shamanic experiences, hallucinogenic experiences, experiences of activation through healing, Kundalini awakening. All of those experiences ultimately bring in this understanding that as we raise our consciousness, we then connect with a range of non-human intelligences, including not just extraterrestrial, but extra-dimensional, trans-dimensional, and those that we would talk of as literally beings that may very well time travel and come from our future. So this is far more complex in terms of understanding human consciousness than we ever realized up to this point. I'm asked all the time, what is this all about? Why are we being interacted with by this range of physical and non-physical intelligences? And it becomes very interesting because the more that those who are having these encounters allow themselves to understand their communication, to have this communication, are finding out more and more about who and what we are. And for me, it was looking at, again, why were certain people having these encounters? The most important pattern of encounters is that it appears to be intergenerational. So in other words, if I'm helping a gentleman with these experiences, for example, I will often discover that not only his siblings, but his parents may be having, or one or both of his parents, one or both of his grandparents, and also his own children will be having these experiences as well. But what I was noticing was, if you like, a kind of upgrade in awareness with each generation. And that fascinated me. So what was actually going on? What was happening in this upgrade? This upgrade seemed to be that more and more the more recent generations appeared to be a lot more multidimensionally aware. And what I mean by that is their abilities beyond the five senses. But not only were the five senses more expanded, in other words, the touch, they saw a greater spectrum of light, hearing was more sensitive, all their physical senses were enhanced, but they were able to see more of the visual spectrum. They were able to see the different frequencies that are not visible in our 3D environment. In other words, orbs of light, beings, energy fields, a whole range of sensing, knowing, understanding, including awareness of not just having this present life, but awareness of other lives in other dimensions, other realities, as well as on other planets. So each generation seemed to be more cognizant of these kinds of multidimensional realities. And this is, again, when people say to me, so what is the agenda? The agenda is coming from, I believe, these intelligences are coming to visit us primarily because they're part of us. And this goes back to the DNA. And I look at that very deeply in my second book, The New Human, where I explore the whistleblower material from geneticists that are saying that we have been intelligently designed, that there is evidence of the splicing of the DNA. And this has created an indigenous being that has added non-human extraterrestrial DNA to it from various star systems. And what has happened over the centuries is the gods, as we call them, which I and many others now have come to the conclusion weren't gods at all, but most likely these intelligences that have been monitoring their seeded family, which is the human Homo sapiens sapiens, have seeded us and watched our evolution and assisted in that in terms of interaction with us all the way through history. And we've got, I believe, many of our scientists and our poets, those that we venerate, I suspect many of them have had interactions with these beings, such as Leonardo da Vinci, I suspect is one of them, and many others, Einstein and others, and Tesla, of course, that in their dream state, they got these information downloads. This is happening across the globe with people from all walks of life are getting downloads of information from physics, origin of the species, information about new healing techniques. All of these are being downloaded into the consciousness of those individuals that are having these experiences, as well as communicating to them that they are part of them. In other words, those with experiences start to feel connected to these star beings. They feel and know that they are connected to them on a very deep, profound level. And so when people say, well, what is the agenda? I say to them, look, there are many agendas, I believe, from my research. That is what's indicating many different agendas. But the most important statistic that we discovered with the free surveys that we did, which is 4,200 people, 600 questions, the overriding important fact was that 85% of them, after they had become attuned and accepting of their experiences, had psycho-spiritual transformation on all multiple levels of their awareness. And that is, to me, telling you what the agenda is, because this is about an evolutionary shift in consciousness and awareness that is allowing us to access more of our genetic star heritage.
When you're an experiencer, the only way I can describe it is it's like if you met my friends and family before all this sort of revved up in later years compared to before it, they would say that this is not Pete, this is a completely different person, and I have to agree. Your habits, your lifestyle, how you treat yourself, how you treat others, how you have, your outlook on life completely changes as well. Your food habits, your social habits, everything changes. And it's really only those that really know you and that are close to you and that are around you that see this change. And that's sort of what makes people think about this reality being a real reality, when they see that change in someone. That's an example. Like, anybody that knew me before these experiences got very intense started to be like, this is a complete different person. So there was sort of this shift when you start waking up, finding out who you are, and what we all are a part of. There seems to come this sort of urgency and this push and this drive from yourself, not from the beings or anyone else, that you've got to do something to play your part within humanity, to help humanity. And what I can do, nobody else can do, but what every single other person can do, I can't do it or anyone else can do it. It's like everyone's got their own unique thing, and all of us doing that and playing a part as a collective, that's where this sort of exponential jump in human consciousness and evolution and getting over the obstacles that humanity is facing, this is where we're going to push through that, and we're already been in the midst of that for quite some time.
Why many of those within the field of ufology have only been exploring it from a nuts and bolts perspective is because we are programmed very much into believing that unless you can touch, feel, see, hear, etc., it's not real. You have to, the only things that are real are with our physical senses. And that's been very, very important, because there is evidence from whistleblowers of many craft that have been examined that have crashed. There's been technology from those craft. There are, I would say, millions to billions of people now, everyday people, that have photographed and filmed through their iPhone the craft, all different craft. And even if you want to dismiss some of them as a possibility of not being accurate, when you get everyday people, and I get them phoning me, telling me about something they've seen that has changed their reality, that they never even looked at UFOs, they'd never even been in the slightest interested in them, and then suddenly having this huge craft over their house, and how they changed afterwards and what have you. When people say to me, what's the reality? I said, the reality is that after these experiences, people change in dramatic ways from their experience.
Now, I do a lot of work on the side of the strange and paranormal with remote viewing, from how to uncover evidence of anomalous happenings and doing expeditions to these things, to remote viewing people like Pete Slattery. I met Pete at a conference that we were both speaking at in, I think it was 2017. And I think that was the first time that I heard his experiences in detail, as well as seeing his videos and photographs of anomalous objects. Now, we've done projects where we have found that some claims people make and photos or videos they take are just lies and fakery, even though they seem legitimate on the surface. So at that point, I figured, well, my team and I really should remote view some of these things that Pete's captured. While some of the photos and videos appear genuine, you never know if something is fake these days. I think the first thing that my team and I dug into was a really, really curious and unique video Pete took. It was this infrared video footage of a being with a large head and eyes inside of his house. And it was kind of poking its head out from the corner of the video screen. You know, it did that a couple of times and it was looking into the camera, it appeared. So we had to look at that one to figure out what was going on. We saw that this was indeed an alien in his house. And there wasn't just one though, there was basically a whole crew of them. These beings were not totally physical, but they could straddle the physical and the non-physical. In other words, they're multidimensional. They had landed a craft that was, in a sense, inside of his house as well as in the yard. Because an aspect of them and their craft is non-physical, this can actually happen, you know, where the craft can sit on the house in another dimension. And these particular beings were described as being in support of Pete, and not the scary abducting type. And what was actually quite funny was the viewers were really focused on these beings going through the refrigerator and really interested in their dairy products there. But these guys, you know, they were there to physically check on them as well as provide some sort of evidence that they are with them. And this is why Pete was able to get them on camera. Now in remote viewing, what can happen is that when you view beings who have a broader consciousness than humans, well, they can take notice of you. They can take notice of the remote viewers. And these beings did that. They took notice of us, the remote viewing team, and myself, and they interacted. In fact, they still interact with us to this day. Pete gets so many interesting videos and photographs, and you know, we've looked at quite a few of them repeatedly, right? Over and over. So I'll often task not only my professional team, but I'll give viewers in training some of Pete's footage to remote view. In fact, some of his stuff has been viewed by up to 40 different remote viewers. You know, one of them is a shape flashing in the sky with multiple colors and moving into these like geometric patterns, changing shape. And this is actually a fun one for remote viewers in training to have a look at because it's so dynamic. Now they get that this is a Merkaba. It's a Merkaba type craft in which there are multiple like high vibrational beings inside of it. Now Merkaba is basically these two spinning pyramid type shapes that you'll often see being used by high vibrational beings. It's like this way they travel. And when you get these Merkaba type craft, they're also like a cross between a dimensional portal and a ship. So it's kind of like this back and forth thing. So there are multiple beings that are going in and out of this construct and looking and communicating with Pete. The big question for me becomes, you know, with all of the happenings around Pete on a consistent basis, is why? You know, why is this happening? You know, this is not a normal thing. When we looked at that question, it kind of got, I think, a little bit complicated, at least from the standpoint of how humans typically think, but not from a multi-dimensional standpoint. The one we know as Pete is not so much one individual. Of course, there is the physical one that calls himself that name, but you know, really that's just the physical. The data reflects somewhat of a rotation of beings that can and do go in and out of Pete's body. Frankly, he's described as being an experiment. You know, we're not talking a human experiment, we're talking a multi-dimensional alien type experiment.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Farrell of the Mount Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The spectroscope indicates the gas to be hydrogen and moving toward the Earth with enormous velocity.
We interrupt this broadcast with an emergency. This is not a test, this is the real thing. I repeat, clear the streets, red alert. We think that something has invaded planet Earth. The warning call has been sounded, and the stage has been set and prepared many thousands of years in the making. They've been invading mankind throughout time, planting seeds, even mating, creating chaos and havoc. They claim they're from another planet, intergalactic, but the facts they don't match it. They paint this picture of peace, but it's more like black magic. Physical crash could not last through the vastness of space. Yo, check your facts, ask Gary Bates. Then take a course from Joe Jordan and explore CE4's first-hand stories of abductions. People are told that they've been chosen. often mimics of wisdom. Often they're told that they're quite special. They feed the ego of man, channel messages through people. Many speak of this experience while seeking guidance. They've been tricked by wickedness. Demonic beings from dark places who masquerade as aliens but can easily change faces.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences as human beings busied themselves about their various concerns. They were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water.
Let's talk more about these forces and what seems to be their motives. Explore all their sources. We use due diligence and research, avoiding tricks and procedures that don't align with scriptures. The enemy wants to defeat us, and he's created many rabbit trails as to mislead us. A fallen army of dark angels who work together, spreading lies and deceit amongst all people. They've been around since the beginning and have mastered the spinning of truth, the roots of sinning. They use the lure of pride and ego, used as a snare throughout time for every people. These are the weapons that they brandish, and they abandon their first estate. It seems outlandish. They'll try and bypass your defenses and can customize their lies to accommodate your interests. They can trick you into listen and can hook you like a drug, like an addiction. Even by studying their actions, you can put yourself at risk without the proper balance. And too much time spent in the darkness can have a consequence, like climbing cliffs without a harness. Don't drift too far into conspiracies, cause they can hook you into watching YouTube videos for centuries. Don't get me wrong, you want the answers, but know there's agents of deception spreading lies just like a cancer, blending truth with fabrication. So don't attempt to dive in deep without a firm foundation.
With infinite complacence, people went to and fro the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood. Yet across an immense ethereal gulf, intellects, vast, cool, and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their plans against us.